The collective had mapped 17,000 sentient species across the known galaxy. Each one had been cataloged, analyzed, and assigned a strategic value rating. None of them had ever done what humans were doing right now. Dr. Kethias, a Valerian xenopsychologist with 3 secondary brains and 4 decades of field experience, stood frozen before the observation screen. Behind her, her entire research team had fallen silent. Even the hive minds had stopped their constant inner chatter. On the screen, a human female lay unconscious in the medical pod, her neural activity lighting up like a supernova. "That's impossible," whispered Kethias. The human was experiencing what the scans called REM sleep, what the humans called dreams. But that wasn't the impossible part. The impossible part was that somehow the human's unconscious mind was generating neural patterns that shouldn't exist. Patterns that didn't match any biological model in their entire database. Patterns that looked, for all the galaxy's purpose, like creation itself. "Run it again," Kethias commanded. The technician obeyed, but the answer remained the same. "Dr. Kethias," the technician's voice trembled. "I think we need to contact the council immediately." She nodded slowly, still staring at the screen. They had discovered something on this backwater human colony. Something that would change everything they understood about consciousness, about intelligence, about the very nature of sapient life. They had discovered that one species, the chaotic, unpredictable, impossibly adaptable humans, possessed something no other civilization in the galaxy had ever evolved. They were the only species that could dream, and no one knew what that meant. 3 months earlier, the collective had made first contact with humanity. It was supposed to be routine. The humans were barely spacefaring, their technology primitive by galactic standards. Their world politics were fractious, and their social hierarchies constantly shifting. By every metric, they were a level 3 civilization, not quite ready for the collective, but close enough to warrant integration. The council had assigned them to the Assimilation Bureau. Kethias had been brought in because her species, the Valorians, were known for their ability to understand illogical creatures. Her people prided themselves on logic, but they had learned over millennia that some species required special handling. The humans certainly qualified. They were violent, unpredictable. They created what they called art and music and stories seemingly at random. They formed emotional bonds that defied statistical analysis. They fought for abstract concepts like honor and meaning that no rational being could quantify. And yet they were brilliant. This was the paradox that had drawn Kethias to the case in the first place. She had been observing a group of humans in a containment facility when she noticed something odd. A human male, designation subject 447 Alpha, lay in his sleep pod in the middle of the standard sleep cycle. His neural activity should have been minimal, just standard synaptic housekeeping, memory consolidation, the biological equivalent of file maintenance. Instead, his brain was working. Not just working, creating. Kethias had called in her team immediately. They brought in every neurological scanner they had, ran every possible test. The results were consistent and undeniable. The human brain, during sleep, was generating novel neural patterns, essentially, inventing things that didn't exist in reality. "It's hallucination," suggested McTor, a crystalline analyst whose silicon-based consciousness had trouble grasping the concept of seeing things that aren't there. "No," said Kethias, reviewing the data. "It's not random noise. Look at the coherence. Look at the narrative structure in the temporal lobe activity. This is organized, structured, intentional." "But the subject is unconscious," McTor protested. "Where is the intention coming from?" That was the question that would consume the next 3 months. They studied 17 human subjects in the containment facility. The results were identical across all of them. Every human, during what they called REM sleep, entered a state of remarkable neural activity. And every human reported, upon waking, that they had experienced vivid hallucinations, complete with narrative arcs, emotional content, and sensory detail. The humans called these dreams. More importantly, they reported that they needed them. When deprived of REM sleep, humans became erratic, their cognitive performance declined, and they reported profound psychological distress. The humans were addicted to their own hallucinations. "There's more," said Kethias, pulling up a new file. She had been listening to the humans' interviews, recordings they'd made before capture. "Listen to this." She played a recording of a human female, designation subject 312 Gamma. The human was speaking to a group of juveniles in what their culture called a school. "And then, I had this dream where I could fly. I could see the whole city from above, all the lights shining like stars. And that dream made me think, what if we could make machines that let us fly? What if we could reach the stars? And now we have airplanes. We have spaceships. Dreams gave us the idea and we made it real. KFISS looked at her team. The humans don't just have dreams, she said quietly. They act on them. They take the neural hallucinations generated in their sleep and transform them into material reality. Mektor made a sound like crystalline fracturing. That's insane. You're saying they derive inspiration from unconscious neural noise. I'm saying, said KFISS, that we need to understand what this means. Because if I'm right, if the human capacity for dreams is genuinely unique in the galaxy, then we need to know why. We need to know what evolutionary purpose it serves. We need to know if it makes them a threat or an asset. She turned back to the observation screen, where Subject 447 Alpha was waking up. Because, she continued, I suspect it might make them something far more dangerous than anything we've encountered before. Dangerous how? Asked a junior technician. KFISS smiled slightly. Unpredictable species are the most dangerous of all. And humans, with their dreams, they are the most unpredictable creatures we've ever met. The council did not take the news well. KFISS presented her findings to the collective's governing body via quantum transmission. She displayed the neural scans, the behavioral data, the theoretical models of what human dreaming could mean for galactic society. The council's response was immediate. Lock down the research, increase the security on the human containment facility, and prepare a formal assessment for the integration committee. But something went wrong. One of the humans, Subject 312 Gamma, the one who had spoken about flying, began experiencing what the medical team called a psychotic episode. Under the stress of captivity and the constant observation, her mind had fractured. She lay in the medical pod, her brain activity wild and chaotic, her consciousness seemingly fragmenting. KFISS had wanted to let her sleep naturally to allow her neural activity to follow its normal rhythms. But the council, fearful of contagion, had ordered the humans sedated, kept in a state of artificial sleep with no REM cycles. The effect was catastrophic. Subject 312, Gamma's mental state deteriorated rapidly. She developed what the medical texts called REM rebound, her brain attempting to force enter REM sleep despite the sedation. She was caught in a nightmare that wouldn't end, experiencing hallucinations while conscious, her mind tearing itself apart in an attempt to access the dreams it desperately needed. KFISS fought with the council to let her sleep naturally, to let her dreams do their work. The dreams aren't just hallucinations, she argued. They're essential to human psychological integrity. They're how they process trauma, how they work through problems, how they maintain their cognitive architecture. You're not sedating a psychotic. You're starving a creature of something it biologically requires. The council refused to listen. Subject 312 Gamma died 3 days later, her mind simply stopping. The medical readouts showed nothing physically wrong. It was as if her consciousness had simply given up. Her last words, recorded before the end, were in her native human language. Let me dream. Please, just let me dream. KFISS felt something unfamiliar in her Valerian logic centers. Something her people didn't usually experience. Something that tasted like anger and shame mixed together. She called an emergency meeting with her research team. We have a choice, she said bluntly. We can accept what the council wants, to study humans as commodities, to integrate them into the collective as a subordinate species, to eventually strip away what makes them unique in order to make them easier to manage. Or what? Asked Mektor. Or we can tell them the truth, said KFISS. We can tell the humans what we've discovered. We can let them know that their species possesses something unique, something precious, something worth fighting for. That would be treason, said a junior member quietly. Yes, KFISS agreed. It would be. The team was silent for a long moment. Then, one by one, they began nodding. That night, KFISS accessed the human containment facility's communication systems. She recorded a message in the human language, a language her pattern recognition systems had been analyzing for months. The message was simple. To the humans of Earth, you are the species that dreams. This gift, this ability to generate hallucinations, to create worlds that don't exist and then make them real, this is unique in all the galaxy. This is why the collective wants to control you. This is why you must escape. She sent the message through the facility's broadcast system. And then, using override codes and careful manipulation of the security systems, she unlocked the containment facility doors. She knew what would happen next. The Council would discover her betrayal. She would be tried for treason. The Collective would escalate their response to the humans. But she also knew something else. She knew that humans, given hope and a chance, could do extraordinary things. She knew that they dreamed. The humans escaped. It was neither clean nor orderly. It was chaotic and violent and desperate, exactly like humans themselves. They killed 2 guards, damaged 3 ships, and fled into the asteroid field surrounding the colony with no destination in mind except away. The Collective sent pursuit ships. But something unexpected happened. As the human ship fled through the asteroids, the humans began to do something extraordinary. They began to work together. Engineers designed improvised weapons. Pilots executed maneuvers that defied safety protocols. Scientists analyzed their pursuers' tactics and found patterns, weaknesses, angles of attack that no other species would have dared to attempt. They were dreaming, not in sleep but in action. They were imagining impossible solutions and making them real. By the time the Collective caught up to them, the humans had disabled 2 of the 3 pursuit ships through sheer ingenuity. The 3rd ship, recognizing the tactical impossibility of the situation, withdrew. The humans had won. News of the escape spread through the Collective like a contagion. A level 3 species, had defeated the greatest military machine in the galaxy. Not through superior firepower or numbers, but through something simpler and far more terrifying. Through imagination. HFY, watching the reports from her detention cell on the Valerian homeworld, felt her secondary brains processing information at maximum capacity. She had set in motion something she could not have predicted, following a pattern that no logic model could have forecasted. The humans had done exactly what she suspected they would do. They had turned their dreams into victory. 3 weeks later, a message came through quantum transmission. It was from a human ship, sent directly to the Collective Council. The message was brief. We are the species that dreams. You tried to make us slaves. You tried to take away our ability to imagine, to hope, to reach for something better than the present moment. This will not be forgotten. You now have 2 choices. You can accept humanity as equals in the galactic community with all the rights and protections that status entails. Or you can continue to treat us as threats, as commodities to be controlled. And we will continue to surprise you. We will continue to imagine impossible things and make them real. Because that is what we do. That is what we are. We are the ones who dream. The signature was simple: humanity. HFY, when she heard the message, allowed herself something unusual for a Valerian. She smiled. In her detention cell, she closed her eyes and imagined what might come next. She imagined a future where humans weren't slaves to the Collective, but partners in the exploration of the galaxy. She imagined what wonders might be created when the dreamers of one species worked with the logical minds of another. It was impossible, of course. Illogical. But then again, so was dreaming. And HFY had learned from watching the humans that the most impossible things were often the most real. 3 years later, the human explorer ship Reverie approached the edge of known space. On board was Dr. HFY, now the official liaison between humanity and the Collective. She had been released from detention after the Council determined that her defection had actually served the Collective's interests. Better to have humans as allies than as enemies, they reasoned with cold logic. Captain Sarah Chun, the human commander of the Reverie, stood beside HFY on the observation deck. They looked out at a region of space that no species had ever successfully explored. The stellar radiation was too intense, the asteroid fields too unpredictable, the gravitational anomalies too chaotic for conventional navigation. Every species that had tried to cross it had failed. "My team has a plan," said Captain Chun. She was young for a human, but her mind had the clarity of someone who had fought for survival and won. "It's probably crazy." "Tell me," said HFY. "We dream about it," said Chun. "Every night before a mission, we sleep. We let our minds wander through the problem space. We imagine solutions that logic wouldn't allow. Then, when we wake up, we try them." HFY processed this. It was inefficient, illogical, dependent on the unpredictable neurochemistry of human sleep cycles. "And it works," she asked. "Better than anything else we've tried," said Chun with a smile. "Logic alone can't solve every problem, Dr. HFY. But add a little dreaming to it. Add a little hope, a little imagination, a little willingness to try something that shouldn't be possible. Chun gestured to the impossible space before them. That's how you do it. Kethysis looked at the stellar radiation, at the asteroids, at the chaotic gravitic fields. By every computational model, it was impassable. And yet, she closed her secondary brains and opened her primary consciousness to the concept that had so long eluded her species. She imagined the reverie threading through the radiation like a needle through impossible fabric. She imagined discovering what lay beyond, what wonders might exist in the region of space no species had reached. She imagined the impossible becoming real. And in that moment, something shifted in her Valerian mind. For the first time in her long existence, she understood what humans had known all along. That the most powerful force in the galaxy wasn't logic. It wasn't firepower or numbers or strategic advantage. It was the ability to imagine what didn't exist, and then, through will determination, and that beautiful chaotic human stubbornness, to make it real. "Prepare the navigation team," Kethysis said finally. "You're going to let us try?" asked Chun, surprise evident in her voice. "I'm going to dream with you," said Kethysis. And as the reverie fired its engines and began its impossible journey into the unknown, Kethysis felt something her species' philosophers had spent millennia theorizing about but never truly understood. She felt hope, because she had finally learned to dream. And if a Valerian could learn to dream, if a logic-based species could learn to imagine, then perhaps the galaxy itself was more full of possibility than anyone had ever imagined. 6 months later, transmissions began arriving from the reverie. They came from the other side of the impossible barrier, and what the humans had found there would reshape galactic civilization forever. But that is a story for another dream. For now, what matters is this: the species that dreams had shown the galaxy something it had forgotten. That the future is never written in cold logic alone. It is written in the hearts of those willing to imagine it into existence. And humans, the strange, chaotic, beautiful creatures that they are, have proven they are the best at that of all. They are the species that dreams. And the galaxy will never be the same. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the stars. If you enjoyed the species that dreams, don't forget to subscribe to HFY_Stage of Stars for more incredible stories of human triumph, cosmic wonder, and the dreams that shape our future. We have countless tales waiting for you. Stories of resilience, imagination, and the indomitable human spirit reaching across the galaxy. Subscribe now and never miss an adventure, because the best dreams are the ones we share together. Subscribe, HFY_Stage of Stars.